So I want to say on the issue of narrative, we've got some momentum going. I see some great narrative change work happening all around the country on most issues, right? That we know sort of get us to the promising kind of future that we're all trying to get to, right? A place where communities are thriving, where people are connected to the resources that they need for wellness, where our kids are wonderful and beautiful and all doing great, amazing things, and we're all set to retire and have beautiful lives, right? But so I think I see some amazing kind of momentum happening, and momentum matters, right, in terms of the work that we're doing. I also see some ways as we're thinking about narrative and how it leads up to all the case making that we're doing, that there are just some redirections that we need to supercharge the work and to avoid, I think, some of the costly mistakes that are happening, right, at keeping us, right, from getting there, right, in the way that we need to. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what are some of the ways that we can supercharge our narrative strategies, what are some of the understandings, and how we even challenge some of the assumptions that we're making about narrative, and how we change narrative that once we do that, we're able to get, right, some of those green lights. And in fact, as I go through some of these, what I call narrative redirections, we're going to talk about how do we get to the green lights? How do we get there faster, right? Because we are changing the way that we think about some of these issues. So if you stay with me just for a moment, right, I'm going to start to go through some of those narrative redirections. And because I want you to digest the lessons really thoughtfully, I'm going to start each of the lessons or each of the narrative redirections with a story, because how fitting, we're talking about narrative and storytelling. Why not start with story? So we're going to do a little bit of that. And at the end of each one, I want to get really thoughtful and specific about what is the green light that we're after, that if we take on the assumptions and shift a little bit of how we're practicing narrative change, we can get more of those green lights going. So let's get started. So the first narrative redirection that I want us to sort of really ponder, I've subtitled, the story here is, Santa Claus is real. Okay, I know that you think Santa Claus is not real, but let me tell you a story about that. So I have two sons. Both are now teenagers and driving me crazy. But many moons ago, when they were younger, they're 3 years apart. I think my oldest at the time was about 8 and his younger brother was 5. And they believed in Santa Claus, like most kids in the United States and probably in some other parts of the world. And I have to say that I love the holidays. I love the holidays. So, my husband and I would make all kinds of experiences around the holidays. I mean, we would go shopping at the stores and buy all the wreaths and the lights and the trees and the candy canes and build a big tree and have stuff all around the house. And we would do cookies before, the night that Santa Claus was supposed to be there. We would go to the mall and they would sit on Santa Claus's lap and they would write long letters to Santa about what they wanted and how things were going. And we would check the mailbox to see if Santa Claus had sent anything back. And then the night before, we would have hot chocolate and we'd have cookies and we'd sing the Christmas carols and we would, they would get in their beds and then we would have a whole thing. And even the build up to it weeks before. Mom, do you think Santa Claus is watching? And yes, son, Santa Claus is watching. Yes. We would do all this whole thing. And so something happened when my older son was 8. He went to school when he was in a karate school. He went to school and some little person said to my son that Santa Claus wasn't real. And he chastised my son. They're like, you still believe in Santa Claus? You're a baby. You don't know anything about it. And my son, who was 8 at that time, was mortified by that. And he came home like, Mom, so-and-so, I forget the boy's name, but he said, so-and-so said that Santa Claus isn't real and that it's really my parents who do all that stuff. And is that true? And so my younger son, who hadn't heard anything about this, looks at me and back at his brother and looks at me and back at his brother. It's like, what is this? What are we talking about? What are you saying, Santa Claus? Like, wait a minute, right? And so at that moment, I could not, with a straight face, look at my son and say, go along with the narrative that Santa Claus is, a thing. I said, okay, guys, sit down. I sat him down. It was a whole thing. I sat him down. I said, okay, actually, Santa Claus is not real. Santa Claus is really your dad and I. So when you guys go to sleep on the night of Santa Claus, we make our cookies together. But when you guys go to sleep, your dad and I, We go in the living room, we put all your toys and gifts out, like that we bought at Toys R Us and to Target and all these other stores. We put them out really nicely. We eat the cookies, we drink the chocolate milk. And then we go to sleep. And then when you guys get up, you guys get the experience of having this amazing thing. And we do that because we love you and we just wanted you to have that amazing experience. But actually, the thing that you know as Santa Claus really doesn't exist. And then I stopped to see what they would say. And they sat there for a second, and like a long pause. And I didn't kind of know what, like, should I go back in or should I say something? I just kind of sat there, and they looked at each other, and they looked back at me, and they, And then almost in unison, literally, they looked back at me and said, nope, Santa Claus is real. And they looked at it, yep, Santa Claus is real. And then they went off, I mean, literally, like we had not just had a conversation. And I thought, I don't know what just happened. I tried to kind of get them to the reality of what was really happening here. And they decided in that moment that for them, Santa Claus was going to be real. So why do I say this? I say this for a lot of folks who are in communities right now and you're battling things like misinformation and you're trying to give the full story about how the world really works. And folks are like, no, we're going to believe what we believe about how the world works. And you're like, no, but that's kind of like not how it really happens, right? And you have this moment where you think that you're bringing information or stories or narrative or conversations that should help people make the transition to a different way of thinking. And they hear what you're saying and they choose to believe the misinformation or the thing that's actually not true. And you walk away from the exchange going, okay, like, what just, like, I literally didn't know what to do in that circumstance. Do I continue to play along with it because they're playing along with it? Do I come back later and just give them some time to digest? Like, so I took my cue from them. They wanted to believe in Santa Claus. So that Christmas, we made the cookies. We set up for Santa Claus. We had the milk, the chocolate milk. They went to bed. We put the stuff out. Santa Claus was real. But I want to say for those of us who are in the narrative change space, right, that a part of the reason why people choose to believe even things that may not be real in the moment is not because they can't grapple with the information. It's that they love the experience of what it was and they can't let that go. My kids wanted to believe in Santa Claus, not because, right, it was this mythology, and they wanted to believe it because they love the folklore. They love the energy of it. They love the experience of it. They love the going to the mall and sitting on Santa's lap, and they love the writing the letter. They love the experience and the cultural traditions of it, right? And so sometimes in narrative change, we think that our ability to tell it like it is and speak truth to power moves people. And we forget that often it's actually the experience of community that actually moves people to a different conversation. So in that sense, for us, the only way I was going to get my young sons at that time, to shift to the reality of what was the real thing of what happened on, right, Christmas night, was to give them a complimentary experience of what that could look like, our community with or without a quote unquote Santa Claus. And the same is true of narrative space. We know, not just because Dr. T says so, but because there's a lot of good social science that says if you want to get people out of misinformation, you got to build a community around it, right, that gives them the same energy, right, that they want to lean into that they had when they believed in the mythology. So the green light for us is, what's the experience around that misinformation that people are creating? Sometimes they're getting that information from like their community when they go to the Rotary Club or the bowling alley or the whatever it is, and they're leaning into the community of it, not, right, the narrative of it. So how can we recreate the experience of that, the experience of community, of belonging, a sense of togetherness, a sense of whatever it is, the kind of us, of the united bigger we, right, that helps people to make the transition out of misinformation. If you will do that, to think about how we create the experience of that, the community of that, the belonging of that, you go a long way toward moving people to better information and away from misinformation in the work that we have to do to make the case for change. Let's get after it.